You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. This was my 17th season covering LSU football. And over 17 years, I have seen dozens of coaching searches across many, many different sports. And one thing that you have heard me say repeatedly here, over and over and over and over again, is with respect to coaching searches, it is never done until it is done. Like contract signed, press releases out, coach at the podium. And even then, sometimes it's still not done. And boy, was this evidence of that. LSU announcing today that Bo Davis has been hired as the new LSU defensive line coach. If you are not familiar with Bo Davis's background, I'll run through it for you, but most LSU fans are well acquainted. Bo Davis played at LSU in the early 1990s, from 90 to 92. He started his coaching career as a GA at LSU under Jerry DiNardo. He went into coach of the high school ranks at North Shore, and then when Nick Saban was hired, he came back to LSU as an assistant strength and conditioning coach from 2002 to 2005. Of course, Pete Jenkins was on those early Saban staffs as well. So Bo Davis coached under Nick, and then the first year of Les Miles. Then Nick Saban hired him in 2006 with the Miami Dolphins, and then brought Bo Davis with him to Alabama in 2007, where he was there from 2007 to 2010. After Alabama, he went to Texas for his first stint there, and then back to Alabama in 2014 and 2015. He was fired at that point, left, was given a show cause penalty by the NCAA because of an apparent or reported meeting with boosters and recruits. Basically, he was Nick's fall guy. And from that point, he was out of college football for a couple of years. Coached for the Jacksonville Jaguars, got back into college football with UTSA and Frank Wilson. You connecting the dots? Then went to the Detroit Lions for 3 seasons, then hired at the University of Texas, where he's been since 2021. And seemingly every year, LSU makes a run at Bo Davis. Seemingly every year, we hear the Bo Davis rumors. And I talked about this all last week. We have heard Bo Davis conversations and Bo Davis's name mentioned in conjunction with the LSU job seemingly every year. And I've always said, I'd love it. I'll believe it when I see it. We have the rumor every single year with Bo Davis. And boy, did it feel like they got close last week. There was no secret that LSU was talking to Bo Davis, who was making about $1 million a year at Texas and reportedly wanted $1.5 million to come to LSU. Now, they didn't get to that number, but there was another factor involved, which I mentioned to you last week, and we'll come back to that in just a bit. But on Friday, it seemed as though that had fizzled. Football Scoop, who is as reputable an outlet as there is when it comes to reporting, football coaching news, Football Scoop reported last week that Bo Davis was expected to spurn LSU and remain at Texas. This was a report from Football Scoop last Friday, January the 5th. So that had really fizzled. I mean, Football Scoop's reputable Bobby Burton of On Texas Football reported the same thing, that Bo Davis was expected to remain in Austin, despite LSU offering to make him reportedly the highest paid assistant coach in the country. Well, the weekend passed, and LSU hired Blake Baker and pursued Kevin Peoples, who's Blake Baker's defensive line coach there at Missouri. There's also a report today from Football Scoop that LSU is still pursuing Kevin Peoples. More on that in just a quick second. But it's coaching search. And even when things feel like they're done or going a certain direction, can always change. And that clearly was the case here, as LSU moved and finished a deal with Bo Davis. Hat tip Wilson Alexander, who broke the news minutes before LSU released it. A 3-year contract valued at $4.05 million, which will start him at $1.25 million. One of the conversations I had today after this news was announced was that there was essentially a difference in about $100,000 a year. And when the way the money works out with both starting at 1.25 at LSU and escalating over 3 seasons. That's about the difference. It's also worth noting that Bo Davis has retirement in the state of Texas. And so they were trying to convince him, hey, man, the money's not that different because you're getting a retirement check from the state of Texas anyway. So money was a part of this. But it wasn't necessarily the thing that ultimately pushed this over the finish line. I think very clearly you give an assist to Verge Osbury and Scott Woodward, who have known Bo Davis for a very long time, and really pushed to make this happen, and Frank Wilson for leveraging those relationships. But one of the things that we mentioned to you here last week, and I know Kirk Bowles, the Austin American-Statesman, mentioned it today, is that Bo Davis's son, Bo, different spelling, B-E-A-U, plays football at Southeastern in Hammond. And it was one of the things that was mentioned to me last week, and we talked about it here, and the appeal of being closer to his son was something that might pull. Listen, we talked about this last week with Blake Baker. The money with Blake Baker was negligible between LSU and Missouri. LSU paid him 2.5. Missouri, the new contract he had signed, had paid him north of 2, in the neighborhood of 2.2, 2.3. So I'm not sitting here trying to say that $200,000 is a negligible amount of money. To most humans, it is a significant amount of money. But if you're talking about the difference between 2.3 and 2.5, it's not that big a difference. There are other factors that may weigh in. And for Blake Baker, his wife is from Mandeville. She went to Fontainebleau. She was a soccer player at LSU. The opportunity to be closer to home was a big deal to them. And then some of the other things we mentioned, chance to win a national championship, fast track to be a head coach, all that stuff, which factored in, but family mattered. And ultimately, I think this is the thing that pushed it over the finish line. I think Bo Davis, as I understand, was going to be super content to stay at the University of Texas and let that be he's 53 years old, and let that be his last college coaching job. I certainly think there's a chance that Bo Davis could find himself back in the NFL one day as an assistant coach or doing something completely different. He had been out of coaching after he left Alabama in the private sector for a time as well. So I fully believe that Bo Davis could have seen himself finishing his career, his college coaching career, at the University of Texas. But the opportunity to come to his alma mater, to coach at his alma mater, to make a little bit more money, but the proximity to his son who's down the road in Hammond, and who knows, could he be a transfer candidate on a defensive line that is really low on numbers right now? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not telling you that's part of the bargain, or that's a bargaining chip. But I do know that Leonard Fournette got a scholarship to LSU, and he wasn't the running back Leonard was. It ain't like that's something that doesn't happen. So we'll see if that does happen with Bo Davis's son. I don't know. And I'm not sitting here suggesting that I do know that. But what I do know is, as a father, as many of you know, the allure of being close to your children is something that's a strong pull for a lot of people. And I think that was a huge part of this with Bo Davis as well, which ultimately had him reconsider his decision to stay in Austin and come to his alma mater and coach LSU. So Bo Davis returns to Baton Rouge. This is massive for several reasons. Obviously, Bo Davis is widely regarded as one of the most technically sound, greatest fundamental defensive line coaches in the country. He's learned under Pete Jenkins. He's part of that tree, that coaching tree. So when you talk about a technical defensive line coach, there's a reason everybody reveres him, regards him. He coached for Nick Saban. He coached at Texas. He's been in the NFL. This is now his second stint at LSU. I mean, third, actually, because he had GA, then under Nick and Les. So that's a huge part of it. And just consider the turnover you've had there from Jamar Cain leaving in spring last year, to Gerald Chapman being the interim D-line coach, to Jimmy Lindsey hired and then never coaching, to John Jancic, to Pinch moving into that role, then calling in Pete Jenkins. I mean, that's massive turnover. You have stabilized that spot. And you've also weakened Texas, who's coming into the SEC. Now, I'm not telling you this is a devastating blow to the University of Texas. They have great players and great resources and all that sort of stuff. But this is undeniably weakening Texas and strengthening LSU. So that's you're killing two birds with one stone there. And the other part of this that's massive is recruiting, and there's no way to ignore that. LSU is getting the band back together. Frank Wilson last year promoted to recruiting coordinator. Now you've brought Bo Davis back, and we are all expecting that the Corey Raymond news is going to happen. And if you have Frank and Bo and Corey all on the same staff, you will not have to worry about the talent level at LSU because those three dudes are some of the best recruiters in the country, and they will go get you players. Yes, LSU had a coaching problem this year on the defensive side of the ball. That is inarguable. But LSU also had a talent issue on that side of the ball this year. And that ain't going to happen, and that ain't going to be the status quo much longer with the way that LSU has built this staff. It might have taken Brian Kelly a couple of seasons to recognize it, to see the lay of the land, to understand who he needed to surround himself with to make it work here, to take advantage of the dirt here. But credit Brian Kelly for acknowledging that and saying, who do we need to go get? Him. Go do it. So LSU brings Bo Davis back to LSU, brings back to Baton Rouge to coach the defensive line, and LSU is better as a program today because of it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.